Welcome on into the Wolverine TV. I'm Clayton Sayfie with Chris Balas and Austin Fox. We're from the Wolverine.com. You can use the promo code Blue60 to join us as a premium subscriber for 2 months, absolutely free. So Michigan, the undisputed Big Ten champions. Some people are trying to dispute it, but do they have a legitimate claim? Guys, what do you think? Illinois.
No, the Big Ten said it's going to be winning percentage, and it's just like football. And who was it? Scott Frost's team down there in Florida that put 12-0 national champions on their rings or something like that.
Yep.
Well, guess what? You go pawn that in 50 years and see where it gets you. I don't think that's a national. You know what? You're full of crap. They didn't win the national championship that year. So holding up their cute little signs and everything else and give them credit. They're a great basketball team. They're going to be, in my opinion, the favorite to win the Big Ten tournament, especially if Eli Brooks can't play, and we'll get to that in a minute. But they're playing by far the best basketball in the Big Ten right now, and I think Purdue's right there too. Those are two teams to watch. Michigan needs to find its mojo again, and part of that obviously is getting Eli Brooks back. It's amazing how you hear people say, "Oh, Eli Brooks only averaged 8 points a game," but we put up a stat yesterday that he's number one in the Big Ten in plus minus, which means have scored 263 more points when he's on the floor than when he's not. So something like that. You know what I'm trying to say, plus minus. So, and he's their best defender. I think he'll be on the all defensive team tonight. If not, it'll be, a bunch of lazy analysis where guys pick guys that blocked shots or something like that. So, and go by the stats. But I definitely think that Michigan's still got a shot here, but they got to play better, guys. They got to bring it. Not really a big surprise about the letdown. But as Juwan Howard said, man, 14-3 or whatever they were in the conference, and this is the best Big Ten ever. He said, "I'm not going to let anybody take that away from him, nor should he."
Yeah, Illinois is a little delusional, thinking that they won the conference this year. It reminds me of Texas's Shaka Smart team as well a few years ago when they won the NIT and they called themselves national champions. So I don't know where Illinois is coming from with this one. The Big Ten made it clear that they're going to use winning percentage, obviously, and that's exactly what they did. Michigan won it fair and square. There's no other way around it. It'll be interesting to see if Michigan and Illinois match up in the Big Ten tournament championship. They're obviously the top two seeds. Illinois is maybe the hottest team in the entire country. They won 11 of their last 12 games. Don't quote me on this, but I believe they're the only Big Ten team that Juwan Howard has not beaten during his 2 years here. So I think that's the matchup people want to see in the Big Ten tournament championship, and it would be a heck of a matchup and a chance for Michigan to get revenge if it plays out that way.
Yeah, and I was listening to John Beeline on the radio with Jamie Morris yesterday, and he was like, Brad Underwood should just move on to the Big Ten tournament, move on to the NCAA tournament, because, look at Michigan's 2013 team when they were 6-6 in their last 12 going into the NCAA tournament. No one cares or remembers. I mean, we obviously followed it very close. Like, we remember they didn't win the Big Ten regular season, that they had an early exit, but that was kind of just part of the story of that great team. So I don't know why they're so hell bent on this. And Trent Frazier, holding up his little homemade sign with like a pencil that says Big Ten champs. It is what it is at this point, I guess. They can, and they're taking things personally, and give them credit for the way they're playing, but we'll see what happens this weekend. I would also put them as the favorite. I was surprised to see Michigan as like a big favorite to win the Big Ten tournament. At the same time, if you look at the full picture, this has been the best team in the Big Ten throughout the entire, really regular season. Let's talk about Eli Brooks, because you kind of alluded to it, Chris, just how important he is to this team. Phil Martelli last night on the Inside Michigan Basketball radio show with Brian Bush and Terry Mills said, plain and simple, he's the most valuable player on our team. And it is a great thing for this team that you could argue for multiple guys, Hunter Dickinson, Isaiah Livers, Franz Wagner. The fact you could go to 4 guys and make a case for Eli Brooks as well, and Phil Martelli's doing that, speaks volumes about this team. But you mentioned it. The defense is outstanding, especially in a league with a lot of good guard play where, he basically cuts that guy off and they have to go to their second, third, fourth option. And then on offense, he hits big shot after big shot. He keeps the offense in the flow of things, which is an underrated thing. And you can't say enough about his importance. So going into this weekend, my expectations, if they're without him, which I kind of just gut feeling, I think they are going to be without him based on how severe that looked, and probably take a couple weeks here to rest, hopefully before the Big Ten tournament. I think this is a team that loses probably to Purdue on Saturday. But I wouldn't count them out to get to that championship game. And then at that point, kind of all bets are off.
It is amazing, right? How they lose arguably their best player, and you don't hear a word about it in the post game against Michigan State. They still almost won that game, but if that had been, say, Rocket Watts or somebody like that, and who hasn't done anything forever, it'd be like the whole storyline would be like, oh my God, we didn't have him, and because we didn't have him, this happened, and this didn't happen, and so on and so forth. Give him credit. Juwan Howard just said he's important to our team. Did not make excuses for why they lost, even though they came out and were a little bit complacent, especially on the boards. I know that there's an argument about that on some of the message boards that, hey, no, they weren't really complacent. They played hard, blah, 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 blah. And I do think the wind came out of their sails a little bit when Eli Brooks went down, especially when he got carried off. It's human nature, guys. You see one of your teammates who's such a huge part of your success get carried off the floor, and you're thinking, man, now what? You're not just thinking about this game. You're thinking about the rest of the season, because really the most important part of that game, and I get that it's a rival and nobody wants to lose to Michigan State, was keeping everybody healthy coming out of there for the postseason, and that's something they didn't do. So, but he is important. His defense, you mentioned big shot after big shot. I was going through game after game, man, thinking about, another team makes a run. Eli Brooks is the guy that's pulling the big three or making a nice play, a high glasser or something like that, or a drive and taking it into his own hands. I really hope he comes back next year, because he is a critical part of this team's success. You wish him well. Still don't know why they call him Muffin. I don't know if you guys heard that on senior day. His dad, the last thing his dad said when they were talking about the seniors was, oh, by the way, his nickname's Muffin. And so we got to get to the bottom of that. But this kid has come such a long way. Another great find for John Beilein, and a great job by Juwan Howard of coaching him.
I don't know if I want to know the story behind the Muffin nickname, but hey, we'll see if we can find that one out. I think he does a lot of things that don't show up in the box score and that people don't realize or kind of take for granted. It's no coincidence that Michigan has now played 3 of their worst games since February of 2020, being the Michigan State loss on Sunday, the Minnesota game earlier this year, and then the Wisconsin game at the end of last year that he missed with that broken nose when Michigan lost at home. So his teammates have called him throughout the year on multiple occasions the team MVP. He just does all the little things right, offense, defense. He's shooting in the upper 30s from 3-point range. So if he's not healthy for the Big Ten tournament, like Clayton said, I would not be one bit surprised to see Michigan lose in the semifinals on that Saturday to either Purdue or Ohio State, most likely. But the key aspect is obviously getting him back for the NCAA tournament, making sure he's healthy and rested up by that point, because obviously that's when you really need him back in your lineup.
And the thing is that they're thin at shooting guard. Let's be honest. They're playing Zeb Jackson. The kid hadn't played in weeks, meaningful minutes. And that's an issue. It's something that's going to be addressed in recruiting. And we've seen Juwan Howard do that already. So, but Shawnee Brown is not a 2. And it's he plays hard. He played okay, scored 13 points, but Eli Brooks is your best defender. Rocket Watts doesn't go off for 21 points if Eli Brooks plays in that game, flat out. He was the difference in that game, and it is what it is. So, but at the end of the year, we can say everything we want to about the season. You'll never be able to take away the Big Ten championship, but you look at Michigan State's team a few years ago, when they lost twice to Michigan. They had a great year, a great regular season. What did they do? Bow out in the Sweet 16, I think, to Syracuse?
Round of 32.
Yeah.
2, right. That's the legacy of that team, and they'll tell you that. Not taking anything away from the championship or how good they were, but you can't have a great season, especially, say, Michigan were to lose to Michigan State, and that's possible if State were to win. If you play without Eli Brooks, that's a different team. Michigan's going to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, but I'll tell you this, I wouldn't bet on them going past the Sweet 16 if Eli Brooks doesn't play. Now we feel he'll be back, but and if he does not play in the Big Ten tournament, it would not surprise me at all if they lost on Friday to either Maryland or Michigan State. It would surprise me a bit. It would not shock me. Let's put it that way.
My counter argument to the Michigan State theory from 2018 is, let's say that team did make the Elite Eight or something, or the Final Four. Then I would look at it differently. They hate losing to Michigan. It's probably a problem that Michigan doesn't hate as much losing to them as probably they hate losing to Michigan. But if they made it further, I think that it would have been a different legacy for that team. I think that Syracuse game made everyone then remember, well, you didn't even beat Michigan.
Right.
You did win the Big Ten regular
Round
season.
32.
No one even
Guys.
cared.
I mean, that's the bottom line. Round of 32,
Yeah.
and your rival goes on to the national championship game.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point.
so that's the thing. The rival that beat you twice also went to the national championship game. If you're thinking about that season, who had the better year?
Oh, clearly Michigan. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I'm talking about. So that's the thing. And then we don't know what Juwan Howard's going to do in the postseason. He's done a great job, flat out, with the hand he's been dealt and that he's added to, and but we have not seen them in the postseason yet. And that's where your bread is buttered, baby, and that's where you make a name for yourself. That's what matters. That's why everybody remembers John Beilein so fondly. He had 4 championships in 12 years, if you count the Big Ten tournament and the Big Ten regular season titles, Andy. But everybody remembers him for almost always making the Sweet 16, his Elite Eight, his Final Fours, his national championship games appearances. It's not just making the Final Four; he made the national championship game twice. Should have won it once if they'd gotten a better whistle, and then the other time they just ran into a buzzsaw in Villanova. But tell me that that's not what you think about when you think about John Beilein.
Exactly, and I think that's why tournament success is the ultimate thing. That's why when you look at John Beilein's career, and you kind of put it perfectly, if he did not make those championship games, if they didn't make 5 out of the last 7 Sweet 16, which is still insane now that we didn't have a tournament last year, that still is a stat. Then it's like, okay, he won the Big Ten, he shared it once, he won it, outright in 2014, but never quite got there. Well, postseason success is what everyone remembers, and that's why Juwan Howard has a big opportunity here with a veteran team, mixed in some of that youth with Franz Wagner, Hunter Dickinson, those guys. I do like this staff, though, when you look at Sadie Washington, who was around Beilein and it went on some of those deep runs with him, knows what the 2-day prep is like, knows what the rhythm of a tournament is like. This is different because they're gonna be staying down in Indy or whatever, and it won't be that same type of thing. But and then Phil Martelli, who's made an Elite Eight with St. Joe's, and has just been around the game and is just so in tune with like what a team needs and kind of the psyche of a team, based on hearing him talk. So I'm confident that those guys will help him out. Juwan's been on deep runs himself as a player, and he is a guy that doesn't just go on those deep runs and doesn't kind of think about what's going on. You can tell it's clear at this point that throughout his NBA career and his college playing career, he was fully like basically the guy that thought through everything, knew what was going on, wasn't just along for the ride, and it's benefiting him here as a coach.
Yeah, I mean the Miami Heat culture. You can say what you want to about the Fab Five. Those guys played extremely well and unselfishly together. You guys don't remember it because you weren't born yet, most likely. Am I right?
I was 1 year old.
I was not born.
Okay, so Austin, you have no excuses. But but those guys were so in tune with each other, and that's the best part about this is that this is a similar feeling. He's got that on this team. Part of it's the leadership and the culture that John Beilein built. You can't take that away from him. But Juwan Howard has not only kept it, but he's taken it not to another level. But you know what? He's made sure to keep the culture that he learned and that he's grown with. At every stop that he's been at, he talked about the coaches that he learned from. Larry Brown, I think Don Nelson, he talked about, and several the other day. So taking the best of them, Eric Spoelstra, a lot of Hall of Famers. And he wasn't just sitting there on the bench biding his time. He was preparing to be a head coach. And man, nobody I think would have predicted this. A lot of people predicted, maybe there'd be some bumps in the road, and maybe there still will be. But it's clear now that he knows what he's doing. And, he's not Patrick Ewing. He's not Jerry Stackhouse. He's not Chris Mullen, all these guys that came in. And this guy works at it. And he's so down to earth. Everybody you talk to, they say the humility and how humble he is. Just a great, great choice, and Michigan's lucky to have him.
Yeah, it's amazing how poorly some of these former NBA players and coaches who went back to their alma mater have done. You mentioned Patrick Ewing. He's a disaster right now at Georgetown. Chris Mullen was a disaster at St. John's. Penny Hardaway's been a disaster at Memphis.
A disaster at Penny Hardaway, but he's not been great.
He's underachieved in a big way when considering the talent he's brought in. But I think keeping Sadie Washington over from that Beilein era was a big, big move by Juwan Howard. Sadie Washington got here in 2017. He was a huge part of that late success that Beeline had in his tenure here. Obviously going to the Sweet 16 and 17, national title in 18, then another Sweet 16 in 2019. So keeping him really helped maintain that culture. Phil Martelli obviously built a great culture at St. Joe's as well. He took them to numerous NCAA tournaments. He knows what the quick turnarounds and the travel are like during the NCAA tournament. I think that's kind of an underrated aspect here coming up for Michigan and everybody else for that matter, is the lack of travel. Obviously, they're going to be in Indianapolis the whole time. You won't be making multiple, car ride or bus rides and, plane flights. So I think that's going to really help them in that aspect. I think it was on his Inside Michigan Basketball radio show last night. Juwan Howard said, I'm packing enough clothes to be here for 4 weeks. So they're kind of going to stay in that one spot, and I'm really anxious to see how they perform in that one setting. It'll be interesting to see how they do, not only this weekend, but in the NCAA tournament. I think that there's a chance that kind of getting out of Big Ten play is going to breathe some new life into this team. We saw it on several occasions with Beeline's teams in the past. So I think getting away from the grind and the brutality of the Big Ten slate is really going to help Michigan here moving forward.
Yeah, and the way that teams scout you so well at this point in the season when you play them twice, and it's do or die basically in the Big Ten. If you look at Illinois and the way that they needed to beat Michigan, one, to get back up on that 1 seed line, and two, to hopefully win a Big Ten title if you were them, because it was still kind of in play at that point. But to be clear, they did not win the Big Ten title. Michigan is the undisputed champions, just to reiterate that. But what's something that Michigan needs to clean up outside of getting Eli Brooks back? What's something that they can do? Because complacency, I think, is hard to put a finger on that specifically. I think fatigue probably played a factor in it. Isaiah Livers has been moving pretty slow lately. He's kind of looked like he's in slow motion on some of his cuts and things like that. I know he got banged up as well in the Illinois game, and that's probably playing a factor. Sean D. Brown, you've seen him limp. Franz was limping on that last play. He still got a 3 off, but I think it's kind of the finer details of this team. Like someone even mentioned on the message board yesterday, the screens haven't been as good as they were earlier in the year. I agree with that. I think that the post entries are getting a little lazy. Kind of those details that maybe you work on so much in the off season, and I know it wasn't even a normal off season, and then you take that into the year, things are rolling, you're doing all of them. You go on your 23-day hiatus, and maybe it's just something you got back to playing. Your shot is back, but maybe your post entry's not back or whatever, or you're kind of just getting lazy with it and throwing it in there. Or Hunter Dickinson's kind of rushing a little bit in the post. I think there's just a few details that if this team cleans up, they can get back to playing the way they were.
And it's easy to do. And everybody talks about, oh my God, they're limping into the postseason. And you look at the 13 team we talked about, you look at, I'll go back to 89 before you guys were born. They got hammered by Illinois and they were 3rd place in the Big Ten. Bill Frieder was booed off the court in his last game before he started the postseason, literally. And that team, you gain your momentum within a tournament. I think Beeline always used to say that. It's not, okay, you win a couple of games, and the 89 team squeaked by Xavier in South Alabama. They pulled away at the end. Glenn Rice was amazing. Then you saw what Michigan did to VCU, right, in Detroit, in Auburn Hills at the Palace. And, okay, you're thinking, okay, these guys got it back, and that was after they beat, I think, South Dakota State, right, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So it's like you said, you gain momentum within the tournament. And I think the adrenaline has a way of making you up your game in the postseason, and this isn't like the 11 team. I think it was that the first Big Ten champion for Beeline that went and
12, yeah.
Right, lost to Ohio in the first round of the tournament. That team was gassed. They had given everything. You had Zach Novak 6'2.5" playing the 4 and getting his butt kicked, by bigger guys all year, and they won a championship. You knew that they were going to have a hard time. But this team, I think, has another gear, getting a little bit of rest here, and that's what Juwan Howard talked about is going to be critical here. And I think that's what they're going to do, and I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I don't think there's one glaring weakness right now that they really need to clean up or fix. This might be vague, but just offense in general. They've now had two of their last 3 games have been 2 of their worst offensive games of the year. They only shot 42% against MSU on Sunday, and then of course the Illinois game last Tuesday, that was also one of their worst offensive games of the year, only putting up 53 points. Again, it's vague, but rebounding, they're all of a sudden getting out-rebounded lately. Prior to the Illinois game, I believe they had been out-rebounded once all year, and then Illinois out-rebounded them in a big way, and MSU did on Sunday as well. So I think it's just some of the small details and kind of the finer things of the game that they really need to clean up, and then being dialed in and focused. Isaiah Livers did mention maybe complacency after Sunday's loss. Obviously, you can't have that in a one-and-done setting or you're done. So I think it's about being dialed in and focused here in every single game moving forward. And again, fortunately, that's something that I think they can fix pretty easily.
And let's be fair, it's going to be easy to be complacent when you just celebrated 2 days ago and you have the confetti falling down and everything else. So you've won the championship, and they can say whatever they want. It's human nature, man. You didn't have to win this game. Sure, you'd like to win this game, but the other team, that Michigan State, had to win this game to get into the tournament. So a little added incentive there. So, all right, let's wrap this up, guys. We've got some magazine stuff to go.
Yep.
Real quick. Hey, one more thing.
All right, how far does Michigan go in this tournament? I got them without Eli losing in the semis to either Purdue or Ohio State, and with him losing to Illinois in the title game.
You said it. I think he's the key. So I think Illinois is going to beat him again. But, could it be one of those things where, like 89, Illinois beats him twice and they meet him again in the tournament? Who knows? It'd be fun, but long way to go to get there.
Yep, I'm in the exact same boat. I have him losing in the title to Illinois, assuming Brooks plays. If he doesn't, I could easily see him losing in the semis. And as much as I hate to say it, maybe even on Friday against MSU or Maryland. So that wouldn't surprise me one bit. But hey, with a healthy Brooks, I think this team certainly can win it all. The Big Ten tournament, that is, or at least make the finals against another matchup with likely Illinois opponent.
And then it's the big dance, which we're all waiting for. So stay tuned at thewolverine.com for all of our coverage of the Big Ten tournament. This weekend, we'll do it again next week ahead of Michigan's draw in the NCAA tournament, and we'll see everybody next time.